midway through May, and Bitcoin has mostly fallen lower, as markets digested several key pieces of economic data. The headline was another rate hike by the Federal Reserve, which came as U.S. non-farm payrolls rose marginally higher than expected. Heading into the last fortnight of the month, could bulls be on the brink of returning? At the halfway point of May, Bitcoin has fallen to a 2-month low, as market sentiment shifted bearish, following April's strong gains. With several key data points all being released in a short window, it was somewhat expected that price uncertainty
or seemingly teetering close to it. Joining us now with what more to watch on the upfronts and more is the CEO of media investment company Group M, that is Kirk McDonald, and CNBC media reporter Alex Sherman. Kirk, to you, what's going to be it's a weird week in general. And by the way, our head of advertising will now be the head of Twitter, and she departed our company on Friday. What is going to be the thing to watch for upfronts this week?
You know, Brian, as you said it really well, the time is really dynamic. We are in a marketplace that is fighting for attention. Where those consumer attentions go, where they spend their time is what the battle is for. And this futures market, where we buy advertising, is dependent on measurement currencies, as well as understanding all the dynamics of what all the networks will plan to bring out in terms of their show content. So it's going to be an exciting week.
It is, and I love your optimism, Kirk, because some Alex might find the term dynamic to also mean scary. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Like, hey, that was a very dynamic flight when we hit that turbulence. There's a lot going on right now.
Well, if you went to the NBC Universal upfront, one of the scary things you'd see is there is a writer's strike going on right now, and you couldn't help but notice all of the picketers in front of Radio City Music Hall today. And that looms over all of this, right? I mean, for the time being, the media companies are okay because they have shows that have already been made in the can, as you might say. But if this strike goes on 3-6 months, that's where you're going to see potentially these media companies get squeezed a little bit if they can't come up with new scripted programming. So what you saw today at the NBC Universal upfront was a lot of newscasters, a few sports personalities, but you didn't see the normal cast of characters of the actors, writers, comedy writers. Usually Seth Meyers is the host. He was not there because all of these people did not cross the picket line. So it was a very different type of show and presentation today.
You know, obviously, Kirk, we call it the legacy media. I don't know if I like that term or not because it makes us sound old. I mean, we are getting old, but hey, legacy media is attempting to woo advertisers, obviously, during the upfronts, but many of the digital players continue to struggle to stay afloat. You had Vice Media filed for bankruptcy today. It was once worth $6 or $7 billion. Its founder bought like a $50 million home. Now they're going to be selling the company off in parts. Vox has laid off some of its workforce. BuzzFeed News shuts down, and Gawker shut down again for the second time. I mean, it's like those were supposed to be the future. And we, by the way, invested in some of those companies. We were the ones going away, but now it feels like nobody's winning.
Well, I would say the consumer's winning, right? The consumer's got more choice than they've ever had before. It almost feels like infinite content choice every time you sit down in front of all of the different services, streaming services and linear services that you have as a consumer. And where you spend your time is going to be dependent on how good that content is. So I do think that we're in this moment where an extended strike is probably not good for everyone, but they're great, serious issues that do need to be resolved. And the winners are the ones that can command consumer attention most consistently and predictably. And that's what we're sitting in. So dynamic is exciting, but also winners and losers get made over this period of time.
Kirk, have we figured out how to, I mean, not we meaning NBC or Peacock, but we meaning the industry, have we figured out a way to really make money in all this? For example, it was a fantastic show on Epix that I love, The Godfather of Harlem, a couple years ago, Forrest Whitaker. I'm not going to lie. I signed up for a week, binge watched the show, and then didn't renew my subscription. I mean, I shouldn't admit that, but there's probably millions of people who have done that. How does the industry fix that problem?
So I think that what's going to happen is there's going to be a normalization among the consumers that say, look, I really like the types of shows I get from a Peacock or Paramount Plus or Netflix. And they're still going to be wedded and attached to certain content that they get directly over linear TV. There will be some mix in each household. And interestingly enough, we're getting data back from some partners who are sharing that the combination of low ad loads, but still seeing ads and subscription are really turning out to be some of the most profitable structures going forward. So I think there is money to be made. We're just going through a time where we're learning as we go.
Yeah, and Alex, I talk a lot about the car business, electric cars, and what we've learned in that business is it's really hard to make cars, right? GM and Ford and Toyota, they've been doing it forever. Startups struggle. I feel like media is kind of the same way. I feel like some of these these buzzy startups that get all this attention, and a lot of founders, by the way, made a lot of money, they're realizing media is hard. Making money in media is even harder.
There's only so many ways you can do this, right? So like to your earlier question, what is going to stop you from canceling? Well, that's why a lot of people assume that we are headed towards some sort of new bundle of streaming services, because there's only so many ways you can invent different mechanisms to reduce churn. That's the lingo word, right? To reduce people canceling their services. One thing we haven't really seen yet is potentially marrying streaming services with kind of other live experiences, like this idea of a Disney Prime, right? Where you go to the theme park and maybe you get some ticket discounts, and you also get maybe a discount on your Disney Plus or your Hulu or your ESPN. Certain companies that are fully integrated with different assets could potentially get more creative on the type of discounted bundles. But really, look, there's just two ways. There was an old saying where everything in media is just either bundled or unbundled, and then you start the cycle again. And I think that's where we are in terms of the bigger guys. And among the smaller digital players, you've seen these companies just can't compete if you're dedicated toward getting your revenue from social media advertising.
Vice was arguably one of the hottest media startup, and now it's bankrupt.